Hey, what's going on, you guys? Welcome back to another YouTube video. And on today's video, I want to go over some key concepts about your relationship with money that a lot of you guys have to understand while you're young. And I know that school doesn't really teach us this, and our parents have a little bit of a sense and they tell us how to go about it, but they don't really make it as clear. So I understand that a lot of individuals out here beginning their financial journey and beginning to get better with their finances understand the basics, right? They understand that spending sometimes isn't going to be the best thing to grow their money. They understand that saving their money is going to be better than spending it. But the rarest thing that most people never do is invest their money. So a lot of people oftentimes don't do it because they don't know where to invest their money, or sometimes they don't know how to invest their money. And it's a real big problem, but I don't blame you guys for struggling with it. It's something that I for sure didn't pick up as a very young adult. No one came into my life to teach me, so I want to be able to do my best to help you guys. Today's going to be a really unique video because I want to draw the illustration for you guys to see what different behaviors around your money actually do to your finances. So oftentimes people, often have a little bit of their philosophy a little bit, I guess you could say, clouded around their money. Some people oftentimes you'll hear is like, hey, I don't know if I'm gonna live in the next 3 years, so why am I gonna save my money? Why am I gonna invest my money? So they just spend their money, and then time passes and they're still alive in the next 5 years and they end up with nothing. So I don't want you guys to go down that path. And then there's other people that, hey, I don't really like to spend my money. I'm really a saver, and they have over, one of my buddies has $300,000 saved in a checking account, but doesn't have any investments. And that's because he's not that he's not afraid of investing, but it's just he's a saver. He's very conservative, and that behavior, yes, leads to a secure financial position, but it doesn't lead to any economic growth, any gain in that capital. So you can't be too much of a saver either. Now, when you go ahead and begin to invest, now money begins to grow. But it's very important you research your investments. You go into every investment with risk management, which is something that I really do go ahead and implement to a lot of my clients working with me. But I also want to share with you guys because I believe it's very important to begin to approach investing, but approach it with the right intentions and the right, I guess you can say, risk. So you guys don't lose it all. I have heard countless you can say horror stories of individuals that go all in, their whole life savings on certain investments. And the unfortunate reality is that some of these investments were not quality investments, which is another big component to when you begin investing your money is researching the quality of the investment. I've had horror stories of individuals that back in the GameStop era of the stock market, the 2021, 2020 era, where we had Pfizer, Moderna, we had GameStop and AMC option contracts doing the whole meme stock rally, people went all in. And I've heard stories of people losing 50,000, losing 60,000. I've heard also the horror stories of crypto. People went ahead and bought Dogecoin thinking that it was going to go to $1. People went ahead and bought Shiba thinking that it was going to go to $1. People that bought Floki that thought this thing was going to go to $1. All these mass marketed investments promising extremely high return promoted through social media just swindled investors. They just never seen their money ever again, and some lost significant amount of countless money that they'll never get back. So research the quality of investments, play it safe, and watch what type of financial advice it is you consume, especially if it's coming from social media, which is a red flag that I want you guys to understand and be aware of as you approach the art of investing, because majority of the information you're going to be consuming isn't going to come from your mom, isn't going to come from your dad, isn't going to come from your coworker, isn't going to come from your friends. It's probably going to come from someone you met on social media. And that's just the way society works. Majority of our networks and the people that we know don't invest their money. They don't know how to grow their money. We're all kind of just taught to go work for money, save it, buy a house, and play it safe, right? That's what majority of us are taught. But once you step into actually investing, right, you have unique opportunities. Some, I guess you can say credible assets that are out there, or something like maybe your Mag 7 stocks. You have Google, you have Amazon, you have Nvidia, you have Tesla, you have Microsoft. Yeah, that's only 5. I don't want to go into the other 7 just so I don't mess things up here. But those companies are companies that have been grandfathered in. They've been around for the last 10 years, and the chances of them going anywhere probably in the next 2 to 3 are probably unlikely. Those companies are kind of here to stay. They're well established, right? And despite them, still being exposed to losing, right? I'm not going to say, because they've been around for so long, they're just going to keep going up. but there are more established investments, more household, more credible investments. And that's what you want to approach. That's why some people go with real estate, because they know that no matter what, they have this property. Or some people go with gold and silver because no matter what, they have the tangibility of it, right? They have that credibility. And that's kind of how I do want to recommend you guys to begin investing. Pursue those tangible, those concrete assets that, hey, they've been around for a long time, they're probably not going to go anywhere, and maybe they won't make me a millionaire, but they'll make my money grow, or at least keep it safe while I figure out another investment, right? And that's how you want to pursue these opportunities. Do research into them, and I guess go ahead and dive deeper into what it is you're actually getting yourself into. And it's a really big, important habit to do as you begin to invest your money. But one thing I want to go ahead and address in this video is that behavior when you do get money. So a lot of times people coming up in society, like, it's very unfortunate, but around 90% of people spend their money, and I like to say maybe 50 to 70% of people save their money, but the harsh reality is that only 10 to 20% of people actually invest their money. If you go around and ask people, hey, how much money have you spent on gas, on clothes, on shoes, on cars? They're going to tell you a huge number confidently, right? But when you ask them, hey, how much do you have invested in stocks? How much do you have invested in silver? How much do you have invested in assets or crypto or real estate, right? They're going to be like, oh, well, only like $100 or only like a couple thousand, but if you tell them the number behind how much they spend in food, clothes, and cars all across their lifetime, oh yeah, $20,000, $10,000, easy. Oh yeah, just last week alone I spent $600 on food. But when it comes down to investing, the number's a lot smaller. And that's the norms in society. That's what is happening. That's the lack of financial education that is presented in our day-to-day lives. So I started this channel. I started a lot of this content creation to be able to address that and help individuals change their financial situation and escape that mindset, because it is a paradigm of thinking that keeps a lot of individuals trapped. And there's different, I guess you can say, personal behaviors around money that a lot of people are kind of commonly sharing. I mentioned earlier that a lot of people think, hey, I might not even be alive in the next 10 years, so why am I going to save my money? Why am I going to invest my money? I'm just going to spend it. And then 10 years later down the line, they're still alive and now they have nothing. And then there's other people that are like, hey, I don't want to spend my money. I'm just going to save. And they just save forever. And they keep continuing to save, but they never grow their money. And the second that they do want to grow their money, sometimes they never practice investing to where they were faced with some losses or they were faced with some gains. And it discourages them when they lose to continue participating in investing, and then they just continue saving, or eventually just save to spend, which is another unique behavior that you'll find in society. Is people just save to spend their money. They don't save to invest it. And I believe that's one of the habits that separate the rich from the poor. See, the rich go ahead and save their money to go ahead and buy assets and investments that make them money. And then the money that they make from these assets or investments later on pays for their spending. See, if a very successful or rich person wants to go buy a vacation, right? Or let's say take a trip to Hawaii, right? Let's say this trip cost them $4,000. Well, that rich investor will probably take $10,000, go invest in an investment, an asset, make a 40% return in the profits. Now that $4,000 came out of that investment, didn't come out of his initial $10,000. And that's the behavior and patterns that the rich follow. But unfortunately, schools don't really teach us, the majority of us that at least. And that's why we fall into the trap of, hey, I want that nice car, or I want to take that vacation, I'm going to save for it. And we work countless hours to save that money. Once we save it, we just spend it. And we find ourselves right back at the starting point. And the unfortunate side of this is that most people are making this money exchanging time of their life for that money. And money comes and goes, but time, once it's gone, it's gone. So the poor are actually exchanging time of their life that they're never going to get back for experiences, just to see it go and be gone. And this is the behavior that I want to address, that I want to share with you guys and I guess enlighten, because it's the reality. Your life is not infinite. Money comes and goes, but if you continue to exchange hours of your life for items, for experiences, you're never gonna see those hours again. So I want you guys to adapt to exchanging hours of your life to build first a shelter, right? Save your money, but learn to invest it. So once you begin to develop this, I guess, rich person paradigm of investing, now when you're spending your money, it's actually being invested, not spent, right? Let's reword that. Now when you're investing your money, it's actually making you more. And what that money that you make more can then pay for your expenses because you still have the money there that you invested. And that's how you want to begin to reshape your paradigm. And it's extremely important. So I hope that this video is able to help you guys understand this, because it's a concept that truly is keeping generations of individuals poor or helping generations of individuals getting richer. So in the whiteboard here to my right, I'm gonna go ahead and draw an illustration of what these different behaviors look like when they are all faced with the same amount of money, and how it is you guys can begin to reshape yourselves to maybe adapt to perceiving things slightly differently. So let's go ahead and jump into it. I hope all you guys are going to enjoy this video. I want to say a huge thank you before we jump into this presentation for all the support, all the likes, all the comments, and people subscribing here on the channel. It means a lot, and I hope to see all of you guys continue on this journey and hopefully find a better change in your finances and progress as an individual as we mature into adulthood and just become wiser as we get older, right? So let's go ahead and jump into it. I'll see all you guys right now. Hey, what's going on, guys? So here behind me I have a whiteboard. I'm gonna go ahead and draw this illustration here. I'm gonna start with a simple line graph, right? And I'm gonna use black to represent saving. I'm gonna use blue to represent investing. And I'm gonna use red to represent spending. So all of us, let's say, are paid with money every single month, right? Working a job, typically we have sources of income. One individual, let's say they start with $1,000, right? Let's write it over here. Starting budget $1,000. Well, the individual that starts saving that $1,000, you might think, hey, their money's safe, right? But the unfortunate reality is that even the savers lose money. Well, Jerry, how am I losing money if I'm saving it? If in my checkings account it still says the money that was there? Well, the silent killer of wealth is inflation, and this is the reality of it. The cheeseburger that we bought from McDonald's in the 1990s is not the same cost of the cheeseburger we're paying now in 2026. Well, Jerry, why is that? Well, that's because of inflation. As time continues, the cost of goods increases, GDP is increasing, the economy is growing, so things get more expensive. They are valued as more. And that's inflation. So even when you're saving, you're still losing money, and it's very important that you understand that, so you begin to address this as a problem that needs a solution, and typically that solution is going to be investing. And this is important that you guys understand this, because living here in the US, you are in a capitalistic economy. We have not that we have, but the primary source of building wealth and financial gain is through building businesses that can provide value, and then you go ahead and reap that financial gain for providing that value, or making investments that go ahead and grow and then give you that financial gain. Those are the two primary ways in a capitalistic economy to grow riches and wealth. It's by either investing and building businesses. Being an employee is only going to get you so far, and it's important that you notice this also as well in your mind while you're young, to establish new creative thoughts to provide unique forms of value, and that unique form of value, just being unique in its own, will provide for you financially. So that's important that you guys understand that about saving. I know a lot of people oftentimes think, hey, just because I'm saving, I'm going to save my way to $1 million. Oftentimes that's not the reality. You know, $1 million in the 90s is not worth $1 million right now in 2026. That's the unfortunate truth, but I have to share that with you guys to clarify that. Now, let's go ahead and go into the next one. The individual has $1,000, right? But immediately starts to buy shoes, starts to buy clothes, starts to buy a car, food, and sooner or later he's faced back at $0 because he just spent their money, which is what 90% of people do. You know, they start off with $1,000, they say they're not going to spend so much, but as time continues, they do. Now let's go ahead and see what the investor does, right? This individual has $1,000. Well, I'm not going to go ahead and project this illustration to be biased. Investing comes with risk. Investing comes with sometimes financial losses, and you have to be prepared for that. So with that being said, when you invest your money, sometimes, hey, maybe it will be rough. But if you're invested in credible assets, something maybe like the S&P 500, which goes up 10% over the last maybe 10 years, eventually you will come out growing. And I'm not going to say you grew 1,000 into 1,000,000, but let's say you grew 1,000 into 1,500. And now, if we subtract our initial capital of, let's say 1,000, I'm left with $500 in profit that now I can either allocate here to save, or if you really want to enjoy yourself, you can now allocate here to spend. Now you notice that out of all the three behaviors, only investing came out with a positive return. Spending came out with a negative 1,000. Saving, hey, maybe you didn't lose negative 1,000, maybe you only lost negative 100 due to inflation, right? But even saving won't keep your money safe from losing. Spending, you're guaranteed to lose. Investing, hey, yes, you might lose, but choosing credible assets, implementing the right research, implementing the right risk management, you can come out with a financial gain. And that's very, very important. That's something that I want all of you guys to understand, because it's a behavior. It's not necessarily something that we want to do. It's becoming something, unfortunately, that we have to do. And the reality of the world is things are not going to get cheaper. Things are only going to get more expensive. If you think gas prices right now are absurd, paying and buying houses right now at $500,000, some houses going for $1 million is a lot of money to you, you're going to be in for a very harsh reality, because things are not going to get cheaper. They're only going to get more expensive. And that's the harsh reality that a lot of us are going to be facing, especially us, young adults in our early 20s, some, approaching maybe early 30s, some in our teens. Life is not going to get any easier. It's only going to get harder. So adapting to these behaviors at a very young age are extremely important. And I share this video with you guys because I want you guys to understand that. I want you guys to see what the benefits are of investing your money, more importantly, saving your money, and the consequences of spending your money. A lot of individuals, if I draw right here behind me on this small little note here, right, I'm going to do a similar one. If we use this second illustration here, I want to show you guys what most people do. Most people, remember, spending is still red, saving is black. Most people, they'll go ahead and save their money, and eventually, oh, I want that nice car, or I want to take that vacation. Then they spend. Some people save their money and always save, and inflation takes a little bit. And this is for my savers. And then, well, unfortunately, we call them rich and wealthy, but those people save their money, and sure, let's say there is some consequences, right? But eventually, they make their money. But you notice the real commonality here in all the behaviors is saving. You're not going to build any chance of success, any chance of growth if you don't start saving. If you get money and the second you get it, you just want to, let's say you just got the money and you just want to spend, you'll never get the chance to either save to eventually spend more, save to just, eventually you will lose, but at least you'll be able to save more, or save to eventually grow into more. And that's extremely important that you guys notice this as you develop with your money, because if you can just teach yourself to learn to harness your money and save it, I almost promise you that you will discover some form of financial opportunity, whether it be a creative idea that you want to create into a business. You will have the money saved to be able to make it a reality, or at least begin to shape it into a reality, right? And that's what I want people to begin to adapt to. Because once you have an abundance of money, your mind begins to think abundantly. Let me explain this concept here. So someone that has $100 saved will never think about, I guess you can say, investing $1,000 or $10,000. The milestone is just too high. It seems too impossible, too big of a mountain to climb. But the individual that has maybe $5,000 saved, hey, investing $10,000 is now like, hey, I'm actually halfway there. If I keep it up, I can do that. And then they are able to eventually invest that capital. It grows for them, and their life turns out much more financially stable or successful. And that's what I want you guys to understand, that a lot of individuals, they save to a certain point, but since they don't see a future for that money, they just fall into the spending. Or sometimes they'll never be able to grasp that vision for what they can grow and invest their money into, simply because they never save, and that creative thought or that creative opportunity never presents itself. So I really do make this video with a passion. I make this video hopefully with the intention of providing value to you guys and a different perspective on what it is you can be doing with your finances to hopefully begin to shape your paradigm into valuing what you have instead of just jumping to spend it. Because I truly do want you guys to live a beautiful life. I want all of you guys to have financial stability in your lives, and more importantly, I don't want you guys to suffer. I don't want you guys to repeat the patterns that society and our families have repeated, leading us to have a disadvantage in developing ourselves financially and successfully. So I believe in this, and I am proud to be able to share it, demonstrate it with you guys. I hope that it is helpful. I hope that this was something that someone out there gains value from. And I thank you all for the support here on the channel. I hope all you guys enjoy this video. Thank you once again for all the support. Jerry Trades and SoCal Trading Group, over and out.